welcome back everybody to Deposit That Podcast. It's season 2, episode 4 already. Before we get into our guest, we gotta play her intro song. I hope she likes it.
Oh, I love that.
Right?
Yes.
So you said you wore pearls today. Tell everyone why you were wearing pearls.
Well, it is in honor of the first female vice president. So women across the country are wearing pearls and Chucks, Converse, and the pearls are in meaning of her sorority. So congratulations to our first female vice president. I think that's amazing for all women of all races, all colors, in general, and worldwide. It's important.
I think it's a step in the right direction. Obviously,
Sure.
we still have so much more work to do, but like these little wins, I call them. It's a big win, but it's a little win in general in the scheme of where women and minorities and people want to go.
Yeah.
So I have a friend that plays in the NFL. He plays for the Colts. He just got picked to the All-Pro team, and I told him, I said, I got this girl coming in. I think she's your type, So
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to set up like a blind date for you guys. So he tuned in. He said, "I'm tuning in, yo." So
That's so funny.
I'll plug you in my NFL plug in a little bit. So let's get right into who you are. Tell everyone who you are, what you do, what you specialize in. Tell everyone your story.
So I am from Jersey City, but I was not raised in Jersey City. So I'm immigrant parents, off the boat from Colombia, and I lived there till I was 8, and I grew up in Puerto Rico. And then I moved back to Jersey. I went to the military for a while, then I came back to Jersey City.
I forgot you were in the military.
Yeah, seems like a lifetime ago, but did that, and then I came back to Jersey City, and I've been there since. And I love Jersey City. I never wanted to leave because of its proximity to New York City, really. Yep. And I got so much more space, and I had a backyard, and I had parking, and I got all that for a fraction of the price. And I worked in Manhattan mostly, and I would commute. But then things started to change. And I was doing real estate in New York City, and this was the time where a lot of foreign money was just coming in, right after 2008, after all the real estate crash.
EB5 money and all that.
Sure. By 2012, the world realized how resilient New York was, and it became super expensive. So the locals meaning, local New York, Brooklyn investors, Queens, were priced out or didn't want to come into the market at such low cap rates. It just didn't make sense. Mm-hmm. And so Jersey City became the golden child.
Right across the river.
Right across the river. And that brings me to what I do today.
The first deal I ever did in New Jersey was in 2012. And I wasn't even licensed in Jersey. I had to refer it to someone else at my bank at the time. Was a Wall Street banker that I previously did his mortgage in Midtown Manhattan. And Goldman Sachs or Chase, Credit Suisse. I think Credit Suisse was one of the first companies to move from Manhattan into Jersey City. So he's like, well, I'm just going to move to Jersey City. So that's what he did. And he was like that trendsetter. He bought at Gulls Cove, actually, believe it or not, in Jersey City. And they put up Gulls Cove 2 and everything else.
Oh, wow.
So it's interesting how, are you still seeing that flow today of New Yorkers still coming over to Jersey?
Well, yeah, definitely after, the pandemic thing, we all see how quiet it is, but Jersey City has not slowed down. Even the rental buildings, you would have thought that they went down in vacancy. They really haven't. Prices have, softened somewhat, but not even close to what New York. I think it's actually made our market even stronger.
I agree. And again, I think people, like anything, people didn't want to go to Jersey, right? Jersey, I don't like Jersey, stupid Jersey, bridge and tunnels, right? I heard that because I was in the Bronx, and people are like, Jersey. No. They'd rather go to Connecticut. But now it's like, wait, Jersey's so close, you get so much bang for your buck, and the views of New York City make it that much better to move to New Jersey.
Sure. And we're open. Restaurants are open. They're somewhat, there is socializing, obviously safely, but people from New York are coming to New Jersey to be able to have a meal indoors, to be able to have a drink with friends. It's cold outside.
I was talking to a restaurant in Hoboken. They said that exact thing. They said, Hoboken residents in general haven't been out that much, but they've been double replaced by New Yorkers taking the path in or the ferry over in order to just have dinner and dessert.
Absolutely.
So it's actually cool, like seeing, I love standing back at the top and watching all the trends move, right? It's like watching ants leave their ant farm, where they go. And it's curious, it makes me curious to see what happens next, right? Because look, most people that make knee-jerk moves, as you know, whether you break up with somebody, you get together with somebody, if it's a knee-jerk reaction, probably not going to end well. And I think a lot of people when COVID happened, they said, you know what, let me give up my lease, let me move back in my parents, or let me move in with my aunt, uncle, whatever. Let me move in with 2 or 3 friends I think I know. Now we're coming up to that, 1 year boiling point of like, okay, now it's time to like get back out on my own. I think people are going to start seeing that. So I'm curious to see if they flock more towards that Hoboken, Hudson County, Jersey City market, or if they look to rent maybe a home in a cheaper price point. What do you think happens?
I mean, it really depends on individuals, right? Obviously, married couples are going to want more space, backyard, parking. And even I saw my friends that were living together as a couple, they decided to get married. They have moved out to the suburbs now. They've gone to Montclair. They've gone to Clifton. So I think the people that were in Hoboken, Jersey City, that were maybe there for a while have moved on to the suburbs. And then we're seeing the single New Yorkers hitting Jersey City. So it's depends on what phase in life you're in.
Now, I think one of the most important things about you, like you said about earlier, is both your parents are straight off the boat, right? So what cultures and values did they instill in you at an early age that have allowed you to progress in your career and become the woman that you are today?
Oh, sure. Well, one of the funny things is my parents own a couple multifamilies in Jersey City, when they've had them for, oh my God, so many years. And when we lived in Puerto Rico, there was a time that neither of them were working. They were just, living, raising a family. My dad loved horses. That was his thing. My mom was, homemaker. And they lived off the rents. They just lived off the rents because the houses were paid off. They were very good at saving. And that grew on me. I didn't really understand what the value of real estate was as a child. But as you get older, you're like, wait a minute. This has allowed my parents to live a life that is very free of their time, and time is the most valuable asset. So I think that to me was such a big deal, knowing that real estate was going to be such an important part of my life. And then that's on the real estate side, and on the personal side, they're such great people, just caring and humble, and just they treat everyone the same. So I think that's very important, especially in these times where people are going through such a hard time and you don't know where people are. And we all became a community. We all became a big community. So keeping that human aspect of it, that definitely comes from home.
Now, as you know, I deal with a lot of realtors. I've always dealt with realtors, and I pick out the good apples from the bad apples. And sometimes I see a nice shiny red apple, right? Like the red lipstick. And then you bite the apple, and it's like, oh, this is rotted on the inside, but you couldn't tell on the outside, right? Now, knowing you for, I think, 4 years now, maybe going on 5 years, right? Believe it or not, time flies, is you're always a pleasure to deal with. You're always a pleasure to see. You're always a pleasure to speak to. You're never nasty. You're always able to kind of like take that deep breath, regroup, right? And like, let's get the job done. Like, let's work as a team. Did you always operate in real estate that way, or what gave you that advancement and bring that level of professionalism while still maintaining respect and smiling and bringing that all together?
I've always smiled. That's my
that's
my
that's
signature. Yes, I can't help that.
Yeah.
I always say that my sales beginning came from bartending. So that's where my people smart came from. You could feel off people's energy. And when you're bartending, you're a psychologist. You're just listening to everyone's life, and your job is to make people's time there easy, fun, easygoing. So I think that gave me an advantage of learning to deal with people. And I don't know. I mean, there's so many nasty people out there. I don't want to be one of them.
Yeah,
I don't want to be someone that's upset. There's no reason to hold on to it. Most people, when you're doing business with them, especially in a real estate transaction, they're holding on to something, if they're on the sales side, that's very dear to them. And they, more than likely, don't trust you because they don't think you have your best interest in mind. And then if you're representing the buyer, if the buyer's not being honest, there's so many things that can go wrong with the transaction. So if you're not there to keep the peace, it's not going to work out. And then no one's going to want to work with you again. What's the point? So I try to keep it as neutral as possible and to put myself in their positions. And you don't know what's going on in their household, personal life. And, we're all human. It's trying to kind of balance that human aspect of it.
For all the women out there that are listening, tell them how you maintain and demand your level of respect, but still are able to form a lasting relationship. Because as we know in real estate, like if someone's scrolling through and they see a very pretty woman realtor, hey, I want you to represent me. I want you to sell my property. And maybe they really don't, or maybe they do. Who knows, right? Maybe they have like an ulterior motive. How do you conduct business that way or demanding that level of respect? That's an important thing in today's world.
That is difficult to figure out when you're first starting. Like I said, I started sales very young, and then I went to I did men's clothing for a long time. So I've always been surrounded by men in a very strange way, military, and then men's clothing. And it's experience 100%, but you also have to have like certain boundaries without being too harsh, because you're a lady, you still want to come off as a lady, and if you're too harsh, then people are not going to relate to you. Right. But you also have to have boundaries. You know, sometimes you can laugh things off and say, ha ha, yeah, not funny, you know, but do it in a ladylike way. And that for me has worked. I'm not saying that's for everyone, but if I feel like someone said something inappropriate, because they, you know, it just happens, just kind of like, okay,
that's you're boxing now. That's you kick some ass, right?
Kicking butt.
Yeah, is that for those people that cross that line, or what is that for?
No, that's just because I love it.
Gotcha.
But
it's like hitting things.
Yeah, I love hitting things, but in the gym.
Gotcha.
But there's something beautiful that I think women have sometimes forget about, that our gift is that we are women, that we're not men, that we don't have to be men, that we can still be respected and come across professional without having to be harsh and like mean or, you know, not pleasant to be around. And on the contrary, I think people will keep on coming back when you are a nice person, period.
And I always said this early on in life when I went into the professional world, probably like 24, 25 years old, in that range. Like, women have the utmost power and advantage if they realize that.
Sure.
Right? So I think in real estate and business in general, some women feel maybe insecure or inferior because of preconceived notions, whatever it may be, being in a male-dominated industry world, unfortunately, that they try and overcompensate for what they lack, right? And that's where they come out as like, wait, yeah, does this really like jive with what we're doing here, you know? And I feel like there's a lot of women groups out there that are like, oh, women for women, women for women, women for women. And I'm like, I'm me for everybody, you know? Like, if you're cool, if you're a good person, like if I want to like vibe with you, like I'm going to give you business. But when you hold these exclusive women on women cults, you eliminate me from helping you, you know? So what do you think about that? Like, what do you think about like all these like women empowerment groups that eliminate men from attending or joining or supporting? Being a woman. Being
a lady, I'm all for girl power. So if I can help any of my
I used to listen to the Spice Girls when I was younger.
Spice Girls are great. But obviously, if there is a man that's doing a job better and he's more honest and he's better at his job, then you have to consider, are you really just doing this because it's a woman? However, I am all for helping each other out as women, because it is a man's world out there. And I was just having this conversation with a colleague, because she's in sales as well, and we're hunters. We're on that phone. Like, we're cold calling people. They don't know who we are. Yeah, like, we're trying to convince them that we can do right by them. Who are you? Sure. And when we get on the phone, the people that are nastiest are the women. When I am cold calling people, the women are the ones that get offended. How did you get my number?
Wow.
We'll lose the number. It's not. The men will just talk to you. And that's very interesting to me, because you would think that, oh, okay, well, how can you help me? Maybe not right now, but maybe in the future. But it's actually the opposite.
Do you feel like maybe because they don't feel as if they are prepared to have a business money talk discussion, or they just feel like now you're a threat because you're a woman calling them?
No, I don't. I honestly don't know. You know, maybe one time I should ask.
You should explore.
You know, did I offend you?
Absolutely.
I apologize. Why
should I ask your husband?
Yeah, no, I don't think that's gonna work. I wouldn't suggest that one.
Yeah.
No, but I should ask why. I feel like you're maybe not happy that I'm calling. Did I offend you? What's bothering you? And find out why, because it's happened repeatedly, and it's always the women.
Interesting.
Yeah. But back to your question, the women for women. I think we are at a standpoint now where women are being integrated, at least here in the U.S., into a lot of things, and it's making such a big change, especially because the dynamics become so much more, I guess, neutral, nicer, for lack of better terms here. You know, when we get into a very male-dominated field, guys talk different to each other. They're harsher, you know. They're kind of bullies. It's a boy. Yep. So women, for example, when I was just doing commercial real estate here in New York, it was complete boys club, like really high testosterone. it's intimidating. And I don't really want to be in that environment all the time because there's going to be things that I'm not going to relate to, you know, what happened the
Vice
night
versa.
before.
Yeah.
So I think women create these groups so that they can avoid that testosterone-driven environment. However, if we're only for ourselves, it's not really going to work. Not nowadays. It has to be even color, even sex, even everything.
Sure. So I know you had a restaurant and obviously it didn't work out, but tell everyone about that journey, that story. What was your vision? You know, what went wrong? And tell everyone how you regrouped from that, how you got over a potential loss or a loss.
Oh boy.
I
totally was not expecting that question. Okay, well, I had the brilliant idea of opening a restaurant because why not? The creative process was amazing.
What type of creative?
Just from the design, the menu, the logo, like I love creating. So that made me realize that what I enjoy the most is making things out of nothing. And that's in every facet of life. Like I really just like even cooking, you know, when you're making something out of nothing. Sure. So I really enjoyed that process. And we took this little space, it was 350 square feet. It was terrible. I mean, it was so ugly. And we made it absolutely beautiful. And that process was amazing. And we brought it to a community a year too soon.
Yep.
And
your vision was too far.
My vision was about 12 to 18 months, a little too soon, but it was there because now that street has become Restaurant
so
Row.
Just so you know, so I always say, not to cut you off, and obviously hold that thought, Restaurant Row.
Sure.
Once you learn, like myself, I'm anywhere between 18 and 36 months too early. So I see something at the very infancy stages, but because I have so many thoughts and ideas, I often forget that I have to give something that 1.5 years to 3 years to get to the level I think it could be. So once you realize that, let's say you were 18 months too early, for example, that means that when you have a thought and you're the first pioneer to that market, you know that no one's going to catch up until 18 months from now. So you have to have the patience to nurture, establish, and develop that thought, theory, concept, vision. So when 18 months is up, now the market's ready for it. That's a very powerful thing that you realize that.
Yeah. But now that street is Restaurant Row. And it's like, it propelled. And that's amazing. And God bless the people that are there now and they're doing well because even through COVID, they're open and they're doing business and the community supporting. What did I learn from the restaurant industry? That you live there, that there are no days off, that your staff on its own it's very tough, and that I loved my life very much and I didn't want to be slave to it.
So you loved food, cooking, but you just didn't want to own a restaurant.
I didn't want to own a restaurant, so I took a big loss, and that was...
Was it more of a financial loss or an emotional loss? I know you don't like losing.
Yeah, well, no one likes losing, but it's... In my opinion, knowing when to cut your losses is so important in anything in life, relationship, business, you know, love, whatever it may be. You stick around for too long, it becomes worse. Yeah. So I already saw, okay, I've lost enough. I can't continue doing this because I'm just going to keep on losing at this point. So I decided to shut down and sell. And when I was taking down, you know, the restaurant, it was painful. It was letting go of a baby. Sure. It's definitely, it took all my attention and my energy and my money and it was gone. But once it was gone, it was like, okay, well, now we can focus on other things and, finish paying off the debt that was left behind. That also kind of sucked because now you're like paying for something you don't. Reminder, it's like, oh my God, here. I guess it's like alimony.
Yeah, worse. I think it's worse.
I guess this is what guys must feel. I'm sorry, gentlemen. Yeah. But I mean, I'm at the point where it's all finished now, and it was a great experience. Even though I don't see any of my failures as failures. I see them as experiences, and it moves me on to something else.
What important lessons can you take away from that experience?
What important lessons? That I should study the market a lot more when it comes to wanting to do something different in a market that doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. We had an amazing vision, and everyone that came there was like, wow, this belongs in Soho. It was because it was so cute, but just it didn't belong there just yet. Right. And I was so enamored with the idea of it that I wasn't really paying attention to would have been better there.
The business aspect, or the demographic, or whatever.
Whatever that was. So that was a huge lesson. And then the second one, to stay in my lane. There was no reason for me to do a restaurant. I should have just invested that money into a multifamily. I would have already, done really well with it. But you know,
so as
you would.
painful as I just felt you having to say that, because
Yeah.
I felt you cringe when you said multifamily, right?
Yeah.
Let's take a step back real quick and
Sure.
say, okay, so you made that investment. You said stay in your lane, right?
Yeah.
And maybe this is a message for me that I'm curious to hear your opinion and insight on, so I can learn from it. So I believe growth in general is something that someone like myself and yourself are always going to look for. We
Sure.
could be 80 years old, hopefully not in a wheelchair. Hopefully we have all of our limbs in our mind, right? We're still going to be trying that new entrepreneurial thing. I just know I'm going to be 80 years old doing that. Like,
Yeah.
let's do this new concept. I'll call you up and like we'll figure out a concept. But with that being said, if you stay in your lane, yes, you can succeed, you make a ton of money, right? But it's also like, should I have taken that exit? You know, what if I took that exit? What if that one time you pass on something that becomes the next big thing that someone else thinks of? So being in real estate, obviously you could lease and sell properties.
Sure.
You can broker properties, you could buy properties, you could do property management, whatever, mortgage lending, commercial, hard money lending. You could all of these facets inside your lane because real estate takes you down so many paths.
Sure.
What does that lane actually look like? And how do you know when to veer over to the next lane for personal and business growth?
So by stay in your lane, I mean something that I know, not necessarily just selling real estate, because that would be boring for me if that's all I was doing.
Boring, yeah.
But like you said, there's so many aspects of it. So I'm actually working on something right now that I cannot mention.
Oh
but
my God.
later this year.
What's that secrets when they
Later
come on
this
here?
year.
I bring people on to hear the secrets and then hold the secrets
not
back.
yet, not
All
yet.
right.
It's too soon. I can't.
We'll have you
but
back on when you're ready to tell.
Totally. Oh, 100%. But it's real estate related, but in another way, in a very creative way, involving people that maybe wouldn't have access to it. Especially right now that we see the way, you know, money's changing hands in a very rapid pace.
A lot of money.
And then money is also changing. Money is not just paper currency anymore.
Sure.
It's so many different things. But this is another way. It's in your lane, but it's another creative way of doing things. You know, it's so, for example, after the restaurant, I decided, okay, I know real estate, I understand real estate, so let's see what I could do with real estate. So I decided to start doing co-living. So I took an apartment that I owned and remodeled it, made it beautiful. And in the market that we're in, it just worked so well because we had so many transient people, you know, here for a year, doing their masters, whatever the case may be. And then COVID hit. And so what happens to my apartment?
No transient.
Everyone left
Yeah.
because they were international people. And then the students had to go online. So they just went back to wherever they were. And so you can't predict really life.
Tough. Very
It's
tough.
like, you know, it's just, you just have to get by. And people are starting to now inquire again and to look at their rooms again. But you really don't know what's going to hit you, you know?
That's real.
Look at the people that bought, you know, these multifamilies within the last couple of years that thought that a 5 cap was a good investment, and now half of the
Or
tenants are
everything could be
paying.
Airbnb, et cetera.
Well, Jersey City. Don't get me started on Airbnb.
We can go down that road.
We
Yeah,
can
can
start
start
on
that. We can
Airbnb.
do that.
Airbnb, people that invested in
Think about
Jersey
that.
City, going in at a legal market,
They were lied to. They
and
were
then
100% lied to.
all of a sudden the rules change. No recourse. Hey, you can't do this
The same
anymore.
guy that said, please come here, bring New York money here, we want Airbnb. Once he got it, and Jersey City was the biggest Airbnb market in the country, said we're not allowing Airbnb anymore. Think about that.
That's politics, and I will not go into politics because it makes me upset.
Well, it's business though.
But from a business standpoint,
Horrible.
it's terrible.
Horrible.
But from a resident standpoint, if you induce fear into people thinking you're taking away from their housing, I understand the
I
outcome.
get the same thing. I've been on both sides.
Yeah. So, yeah, but you never really know what's going to end up happening. You have to, for me now, I look at the worst case scenario, like everything. What happens if this completely just flunks and fails and I just lose everything? Yeah. Can I live with myself? Sure. Am I able to afford to lose like that? You know, or am I going to be crushed where I'm not going to be able to like come back? And, you know, at this point in my life, definitely can't be doing those.
My money's always on you for bouncing back 100%. Now, I know that you were a very young mother. So how old were you when you had your daughter?
I was 19.
Talk about that. I mean, just like the overwhelming feelings, emotions, process, the relationship, and then how, you know, you're looking back now that she's a young adult.
Yeah.
And what's that like?
Well, this feels like Oprah. So,
I thought I'm opening
dear
up like
Oprah.
A book, so here we go. Chapter 7.
Okay. Well, at the beginning, it is like you just got this little baby doll, and you're like, oh, it's real, right?
Cries a lot.
It cries a lot, and then it became just survival of the fittest. How can I take care of this person,
Yeah.
right? It's alive, it sleeps, it eats, it all these things, and I'm just a kid, and I have no clue what I'm doing with my life. I mean, who knows what they're doing at 20 years old?
Sure. Or 40 or 50.
Well, yeah, exactly. And then somehow life just kicks in, and you kind of get a hold of it. And for me, it made me want to do better. I knew that I had this huge responsibility, that she didn't ask to be in this world, and that it was my decision that brought her in, and I wanted to do right by her. And that really motivated me. I think that's definitely the entrepreneurial heart was my daughter.
You think so?
Yeah, definitely, because I always wanted to do things. I'm not a good employee. I'm not really good at doing what other people tell me to do.
I feel like you take rules well, though. Like,
no, I mean, I understand rules,
Gotcha.
but like if things don't make sense,
Yeah.
like I'm always questioning things. Like, why that doesn't even make sense? Why are we doing that? Like so, not the best employee. However, as an entrepreneur, it makes because things have to be logical for me. I like, okay, this makes sense. We got to move here. Exactly. So she always made me wanted to do better, and it didn't matter if this wasn't working out. I would figure out a way to do something else. And when I went into real estate, I remember I asked her. I got very lucky. I've always provided well for her, and she was in private school, and I told her I was done with the clothing company. I told her I can get a 9 to 5 and we'll live normal, or I'm going to take off for a while. We can vacation for a year. We're not going to do anything fancy for maybe the next 24 months, but it's going to take us somewhere else. So do you want to just be, 9 to 5, I'm home to cook every day, or am I okay to go work? And, no vacations, like no more private school. And she's like, yeah, you need to go to work.
Get out there.
Yeah. So I was always very honest with my daughter as far as what I was doing in my professional life, because as women, it's almost impossible to do everything right. It's actually impossible.
As a human,
there's
let alone
no
women.
way
Right.
that you are 100% a mother and 100% at work. It can't be. Something is lacking.
Yep.
You always have to find the balance. So some days she had pizza, other days I cooked, and that was just the way it was. And it was okay. It was always a loving home,
Yep.
but there was also a lot of honesty.
How important is that? Get into that as a parent, like being honest with your child.
Oh my God. To me, I mean, she's my friend. She's
you
my
guys look
friend.
the same age, so I don't know if it's good for her,
Yeah.
good for you, bad for her, whatever.
She's like, we go out and people think we're like,
Look at these
cousins,
twins.
but we go out and we have a good time.
Sure.
Because we're just always had this plane of honesty, that there is no reason for me to lie to her about how life is, because one day she's out there on her own, and if I wasn't honest, people are going to take advantage of her,
Sure.
Of her purity, which is beautiful. But it's good to know what the world is like, too.
Absolutely. Would you consider her your best friend? Or do you have like an actual best friend, like a ride or die?
Well, there's things you don't talk to your children about, right? So, yes, we're definitely best friends on a mother-daughter plane, yes.
Awesome. So would you say that your success and where you are today in life stemmed directly from her? Like if she wasn't there in your life at an early age, do you think you would have found your way much later on in life?
I can't even imagine my life without her.
Really?
I couldn't answer that.
Interesting.
I don't know what life would be without her.
Interesting.
Yeah, because when she left for college, it was like, oh my God, I've never lived alone. But
Crazy.
not with a partner,
Sure,
without another person, because I always had this little
Sure.
thing with me.
Sure.
And she was gone, and I was like, oh my God, I never even thought about it.
Quiet.
It was so quiet. It was
Interesting.
really quiet, and I love to learn. I loved the quiet. I learned to love it. It became my favorite place. And when she came back from COVID, I was like, no, the quiet's gone.
I think, again, the healthy balance, look, I think you find out a lot about yourself when it's quiet. When
Yeah.
you're sitting and it's only the four walls around you, you have a lot of like self-reflecting to do, which I see you got a lot into the whole self-reflecting and the routine in the COVID world. So talk to people about how COVID adapted and changed what was your routine to now what it is today. Tell everyone what your routine looks like now.
Well, I happen to have gone to a 10-day silence retreat right before COVID.
Oh, wow.
And that was just timing. It just happened that way. I went in January. And
Where was that?
they have them all over the world, but this one was particularly in Delaware. And so you go to this place, and when I'm telling you there's not a word coming out of you, like there's not a peep.
For 10 days?
For 10 days, you don't talk to anyone. No one talks to you, except for maybe there's a hour lecture that the guru gives. This, you have nothing to do. You can't read, you can't write, you can't, like, you can meditate. No, you just meditate all the time.
For 10 days straight?
For 10 days straight.
You had to start talking, knowing you had to start talking to yourself.
No, you can't. Yeah, nothing. You can't talk. Wow. And it changes your life. I don't care who you are. And I think the people that most need it are the people that are definitely most, I can't ever do that. Those are the ones that are going to benefit the most. And I came out of this thing, and the first week you kind of like have to adapt again to the world, because when you spend that much time quiet just with your mind, you got to face you. So now you start seeing things super differently. And then COVID happened. So when COVID happened for me, it was like, oh my God, I get to not talk to anyone. This is amazing. I can be quiet.
And then we worked on deal.
And it was just, for me, I just meditated a lot. So I was actually just listening to this doctor speaking about when COVID happened to most people, how not being able to interact was really hard. But for people that meditated hardcore, it actually became a sanctuary for them. So I was one of those very strange people. For me, it became a time of major creativity. Major creativity, because there were no distractions. There was no noise. There was nothing really happening except for walking the dog. That was like as much excitement as I would get a day. So my mind just really opened. And like I said, I'm working on a couple other things, but it was a very, very, for me, beautiful time. I know that's not the same for everyone.
Did you have any, I'm trying to think, what were your physical or mental changes or purges that you experienced for that 10-day window? I can only imagine your body decompressing, your mind probably running all over the place. What was that like?
Oh, well, at the beginning, you're just like, what am I doing here? When is this going to end?
How many days left?
I'm like, yeah. Oh my God, the deal. I remember I was in the parking lot and I was like, I have to shut off the phone. And I'm trying to save a deal. Oh my God. And I was just like, okay, I have to let go. And then you just have to let go. And then you start thinking about everything that has happened in your life. I mean, things that you don't even think of, like, yeah, those shoelaces were green, when I was 5 years old. But then it's like a purging thing.
I can only imagine.
I would say it's a major purge, and you start understanding yourself. You have to be open enough to understand yourself and want to understand yourself. But the most beautiful part is that you learn to love yourself unconditionally. You forgive yourself for everything that you think you've done or is done to you. You forgive everyone around you. You just become love. And that, to me, was the most exciting and beautiful and best part. And I started seeing beauty in everything. Like, I can see beauty in the tree that no one's looking at full of garbage. I see the one leaf that has an extra, spike in it or something silly like that, because you start seeing everything around you differently.
So it's a newfound appreciation for life in general.
Definitely.
So what was the diet, like a holistic diet, like blueberries, bananas, strawberries? Like, what was the diet?
It's all vegan.
All vegan?
Yeah, it's vegan because it's not harming.
Yeah.
It's not harming, so no. But you don't really even need to eat while you're there, to be honest. Like, I was thinking when I do it again, I want to do a water cleanse.
Really?
Because you're in such state that you're not expending any energy. And that's supposed to be very clearing for the brain too. So we'll see. That's the next level.
So I'm just trying to think how that must be. So on day probably 1 through 3 or 4 was tough. Like, when am I getting out of here? When am I getting out of here? And then you went through a middle transition. Now towards the end, talk about day 8, 9, and 10. What was that like?
I think for me, day 7 was like, okay, I'm ready to get out of here.
Gotcha.
It never really gets easy. It's not like it ever gets easy. Because you have to go to the outside world. Eventually it's going to end. But by the time you're ready to go, you kind of don't want to, because you don't want to deal with it anymore. You're in such a beautiful place that you're just like, I got to go deal with this now. I got to go deal with, I don't know, if you're married, your husband, your wife, your children, your job, whatever circumstances you might be having. People have problems. Everyone has problems. Mm-hmm. But by the time you get out of there, it's just like serendipity, peace. It's like I can't really
And then you
explain
turned your
it.
phone on, and then you automatically got tense again. Like,
I,
you're like, ooh,
I
that knot's
literally
back.
turned on the phone and called my assistant. I'm like, Steph, shout out to Steph. She rules my world.
We'll like put her Steph has Instagram. We'll put her
I know,
Instagram like right here on
yeah.
the video. It'll be edited in, so like right here.
Steph Speaks, I believe it is.
Perfect.
Steph, I call her. I'm like, okay, what's going on? Like, just tell me.
High level.
Yes. And she's like, well, the restaurant deal died. She's not buying it. I'm like, no.
No more bliss.
That was it. So nothing was sold at that point. But for some reason, like, things stopped bothering you so much. You're just like, okay, someone else will come. Like, that's exactly what happened. Someone else came.
So talk about, now we're going to shift back into the real estate world.
Sure.
So I follow all these real estate groups. I very rarely comment, unless
Mm-hmm.
I actually can provide something of value. That's kind of who I am, right? Which you probably know. So people are posting all about Zillow now, and how do I get more leads, and how do I get listings, and how do I get my buyer's offer accepted? Like, these are probably the top 4 concerns in the real estate world right now, right? Zillow, how do I get leads? How do I get listings? How do I get my client's offer accepted? So we're going to backtrack that. In this type of market that we're in, what's your strategy to get your client's offer accepted on a competitive deal? You personally.
Most of the time,
Smile.
I have the listing. So that's not a fair question. Okay, so right now I have an offer on a property that my client really likes. I called the listing agent. I introduced myself. I explained the situation. Obviously, I didn't just send a random listing to someone without saying who I was.
No pre-approval, no proof of
No,
funds.
no, obviously none of that. And then, I follow up. And at this point, I like anything in life, it's relationship based. It really, really is relationship based, unless you're advising your clients to overpay for something that's not worth it, which I just don't think that's
Not
worth
fair.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair either. So I would say build a relationship with the listing agent. Maybe, hey, I haven't tried it, but maybe if they really like that property, give that listing agent a bottle of wine, send them something.
With the offer.
Yep, I should have done. Now that I'm thinking
With the
about it, this
offer.
is a great idea. Yeah,
Yeah.
with the offer, something to make you stand out,
Sure.
because otherwise you're just lost.
Yeah, you're one amongst however many
Yeah.
others. So now, I was always told, so shout out to Jennifer Manning and Harold Manaram, the first real estate office I ever locked down in the Bronx. I didn't mean like physically locked down. Like, they gave me all their business as early as 2009, which is my first year in the business. And I got that business by getting a deal closed that no one else could do. So that kind of put me in. And the guy was a legend in the industry. Again, it was 2008, 2009. He'd been around since, like, call it the early 90s. Like, they were putting a buyer in a home at this point every 2 days. So they were doing 180 to 200 buyer deals a year in the Bronx, which is unheard of, right? Record setting. And they always said to me, and I wasn't a realtor, but they said, you control the listings, you control the market.
100%.
So how do you get your listings?
So I was doing this recently, the whole chart of how am I getting my business. So I will say 50% is referral based.
Past clients?
Past clients, people that know me, professionals, a lawyer, an accountant, just my sphere of influence, period. I would say 30% is from ads, meaning,
Ads, really?
social media, my marketing campaigns, my newsletters, whatever the case may be, just ads. And then the rest of it is from cold calling, which
Really?
is my least favorite.
Well, you don't have a face for cold calling. You have a face for meeting people. So how does that work? I mean, it's kind of not what you're here for, right? Like, you're not here for cold calling, right? You're here to meet people in person, feel your energy. Hi,
Sure.
how are you? Like, if you cold call me, okay, you're a dime a dozen. If I see you in person, feel your energy, see your smile, hear your thoughts, analyze your brain, I'm more likely going to do business with you. That's how
Sure.
I am. So is it tough for you to cold call?
When I first started, I really started cold calling maybe like 3 years ago. I used to shake. Like, I would physically hate it.
Like, your inside was just
My
hating it?
body
Yeah.
hated it.
Because you hadn't done it, or you knew it wasn't for you?
I just hated the idea of cold calling. People are mean. But these are all stories that I'm creating in my head. Now that I forced myself to do this for like like 6 months, I would get up, and it was the first thing I did.
Cold.
By 7:30 in the morning till 9 a.m. every day, I cold. And the fear is gone. Now I can call pretty much anyone at this point. And now I'm really doing a lot of, I'm always studying, I'm always learning. I'm very curious. Yeah. I'm always learning something. Yeah. So now I'm really learning empathy, just people's psychology, how to listen, which is active listening, which is really hard to do. You're not there to talk, you're there to listen.
Sure. That's why I think this experience is so valuable from a podcast standpoint, right? Like you said yesterday, what are we going to talk about? I'm like, I don't know. People think I'm joking. I'm like, no, I really don't know.
He did not tell me what we were talking about.
We still don't know. We
just talking.
never know where this is going to go. But I also think that in today's world, like, yes, I'm like obviously watching the Instagram Live and seeing who's joining and see if there's any comments or questions being asked, right? So like that's kind of here. But when do you actually get to sit down for, let's just call it an hour with somebody and have a one-on-one, honest, real conversation, no pressure, nowhere to run to in New York City? You really don't. Like, I know I'm like a 15, 20-minute guy in and out, have a quick meeting, coffee, breakfast, whatever, keep it moving. But like this is a one-on-one locked-in engagement to help people better themselves.
Yeah. This is how friends become friends, when they're listening.
Right.
You're friends with people that listen.
Correct.
You're creating relationships, and in any business, especially now where you can't have the one-on-ones in person, or you choose not to,
Sure.
Whatever your case is,
Sure.
It's that relationship that you're going to maybe have over the phone. When COVID first started, I called everyone. I mean, everyone. I didn't call to ask for absolutely anything. I just called to say hello.
Because you wanted to?
Well, because I wanted to stay busy, because I can't stay still. I can't, what do I do? What do I do? And because people, number one, I did want to know how people were doing. And number two, this is how you foster relationships. This is how you become the person in someone's mind, because you did call, because you did reach out for no reason whatsoever, just to say hello.
So I feel like in today's world, obviously we have FaceTime, right?
Sure.
Like on the phone, but still virtual and digital, right?
Sure.
So it's really not FaceTime. It's more like virtual FaceTime, right?
Sure.
So at what point do people get back to this one-on-one real FaceTime where you're able to feel the energy, where you're able to actually commit to a set time to establish that relationship? Because I don't care who it is, whether it's my mother, my son, a client, I don't care if it's a $10 million deal. Like, you can call me up. You're probably doing something else and I'm probably doing something else.
Sure.
Let's just say it is what it is. Like,
Yeah.
You're rambling, I'm rambling. Like, you don't pick up what I say, I don't pick up what you say. My son's tugging on my leg, whatever. It's not the same.
No.
So at what point does the world say, you know what, we have to get back to this? Or do we not ever get back to this?
No, that's impossible.
You think?
It's impossible. You can't. Why would you want to live your life that way? I don't think that's healthy.
I agree.
For our minds, or even for our spirits,
Sure.
we are social creatures. If that's the way some people want to live, that's totally fine. I totally respect it. We can Zoom all you want, but
Sure.
for me, I definitely don't want to live like that. Everyone has their different opinions as to how fast things are going to go back to normal,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is. What I'm seeing now is that people are becoming more comfortable with meeting.
Sure.
They're not going to tight spaces full of 100 people, but they are becoming more comfortable with having a meeting, having a coffee, seeing people, within reason. I don't think you can avoid the human connection. Impossible.
Interesting. So as far as generating leads, how do you generate leads at no cost? And then the leads that you do when you run ads and stuff,
Sure.
What is an approximate cost you put on that, or budget that you allow monthly? And do you ever increase or decrease that budget?
Sure. I don't do online leads. My experience is just not
Trash.
It's just
I'll say it for you.
it's,
You stay ladylike,
Yeah.
I'll be the aggressive
It's
male.
trash, ladies and gentlemen. But Zillow has a business for a reason, and then if you work these leads hard enough, they will convert. It's just not the type of environment I want to work in. I prefer to put my money into my marketing. I love doing video. I love talking about the city
Fun,
I
right?
live in. I love meeting the business owners.
Has that gotten you any business?
Yeah, of course. Of course. It gets me business, and I love doing it as well. And now when I go into a business that I did a video for,
Yeah.
they're so happy to see me.
Of course.
They're like, "Oh my God, how are you?" Because, and this is I'm paying for all of
Of
this.
course.
I'm not trying to be, an influencer, none of that. It's
being you.
Yeah, I'm showing people the city I live in,
Yep.
what's there that they might not know about, what's cool about it.
Who the
And
business
it's
owners
always,
are.
yeah, and it's always keeping our creative juices flowing because so we have this saying in my office, real estate might be boring, but we're not. So what are we going to
I like
do?
that. I like that.
Okay, what are we going to do to keep it fresh? Because it can get stale,
Sure.
and I definitely don't want to be, the lady that everyone knows that just did real estate. There has to be something more. There has to be also a community component to it. My next facet is really I'm working on something to give back to the community, which we're in the process of putting all these things together.
Sure.
But that's really important to me because we make good livings. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you make a decent living. And I see so many things that are amazing about real estate, but then so many things that maybe are not. And we don't really address those as much.
It's like the elephant in the room.
Yeah, but everyone knows it's there because it's an elephant. So I've decided that we as a group should be helping these people that are affected by all these changes in communities. And it's the right thing to do. And if you do well, good things come back. They just come back.
It has to.
Yeah.
So back to number one now. So Zillow. Obviously,
Zillow.
Zillow deceived everybody, lied to everybody, hurt people in their business models in their pockets, right?
Sure.
What's your take on it? Where do you see the future of real estate going?
I think real estate is, there's different facets of business, right? Like infancy stages,
Sure.
and then teenage, and then adult. We're in the senior citizen phase, and if you think real estate's not going to change, you're wrong. It has to because it's just been around the same way for too long.
Since the 80s.
If you're
40 years.
yeah, it's a long time, and now the big companies, the tech companies, have realized how profitable it is because
Sure.
everyone needs a place to live in.
Sure.
So it's just going to keep on getting disrupted, changed, whatever you want to call it. It's not going to stop. So we see all these trends, right? It's like, oh, everyone's a team, everyone's a group. You can't do it alone. It's whatever you think it is, but it's not going to work the same way it did before.
Sure.
So for me, I think Zillow saw an opportunity.
Yep.
And
It was actually brilliant. If you look at it from a business standpoint,
I think it was very
they got
smart.
someone else to fund their entire billion-dollar business.
Correct.
Realtors to fund the business, and then they cut them out.
So here we are. However, people do know that
Yep.
Zillow is not the most trusted source. They also have that.
Sure.
That's also their legacy. They're not the most trusted source with anyone, not with the owners, not with the buyers, and
Yep.
definitely not with the agents. So that's not also a good legacy to have.
Yep.
But I do think we're going to keep on seeing changes. And the way that you're going to stay ahead is to be community oriented. Because,
Local.
local. I mean, not that you only have to be local. You can have other people work in other areas, but people have to know you. People have to know you and some people have, very international level businesses, but they're local within that
Sure.
that community.
Sure.
So it really is about fostering your relationships.
So who's somebody that should reach out to you in particular for your services? Is it person looking to sell, person looking to rent, person who look to move to Jersey City, person whose parent live in Jersey City? Like, what do you want from a client standpoint?
So I mostly work with people that are obviously looking to sell their properties, but I work with a lot of investors, not so much with first-time home buyers. With the investor side of it, because I just get it. I get the numbers side of it. It's, do the numbers make sense? Do they not? Sometimes they don't make sense, but you have to spend the money.
Sure.
So there comes a 1031. So there's so many different ways of looking at a deal. And I think now within the next year, we're going to see so much inventory come.
do?
Oh, yeah. I think so.
So right now you'd want people who want to invest in New Jersey real estate, for
Yeah,
example.
invest. I work with developers that are, looking to build, or multifamilies that are looking, to get into that. I work with a lot of people from New York that have been coming to Jersey for a while. But it doesn't have to be an investor at a huge scale. It could be an investor looking for a 2 or 3 family.
Sure.
But it's just a different transaction than dealing with a first-time home buyer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you coming on the show. For everyone
Yeah.
that needs to move to New Jersey or sell a property in Jersey City, Hoboken, surrounding areas, obviously reach out
Northern
to
New
her.
Jersey.
Northern New Jersey.
Northern New Jersey.
Her Instagram's going to be right here. Like, not right here, but like, my video got, Ryan will edit it in. Really pretty right here. So I appreciate you coming on the show. Hopefully everyone learned a lot about you. Hopefully everyone goes and follows you. Hopefully you get business from this. But I know I appreciate and respect the heck out of you as a friend, personal business. And I'm really excited to see what you do this year. So thanks for coming on the show. Hopefully we'll have you back again when you have your new project coming out.
Yes,
Awesome.
We'll be back.
Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Bye.